Well, good morning, everyone, and welcome. Today we're with Nicole Schutte, and she's going to take us through how to write an excellent essay for coursework students. We're aiming this at coursework students, although, of course, all postgraduates are welcome. So I'll pop a few links in the chat box to become a member of the Southern Cross Postgraduate Association. And also we are recording, and I'll post a link to our YouTube channel where the recording will go to later. So welcome, and over to you, Nicole. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Alison. Yeah, welcome everybody. I'm going to take you through a couple of slides today on how to write an essay. But what I want to do, or what I'd like to do, is to start off with maybe just clarifying what your expectations are. There are many things that you can focus on within essay writing, and many tangents that we can go off into. So I would just like to clarify some expectations. If there's something very specific that you want to discuss or want to know more about, please tell me about it now. Or if you're not comfortable speaking over a microphone, please post it in the chat box so that I can see if we are going to cover, if it's in the content, or if I perhaps need to switch over to maybe other PowerPoints or links that I have. I try to have a couple open on my desktop at the moment, things that I think students might ask about. But maybe if you can clarify what it is that you're expecting or what you want to talk about, then I can try and weave that into our content today. Yes, I'll just give you a minute to maybe think about that, and then you're welcome to just give me a shout out or post it in the chat. Welcome. I see somebody has just joined us. The silence that you're hearing at the moment is just a moment for you guys to tell me what your expectations are, or what you would like to cover, what you would like to see covered in this workshop. So if you want to post that in the chat, you're more than welcome. Or if you just want to tell me over the microphone, you're also more than welcome to do that. Anybody? I'm sure you came to this workshop with some expectations of what you want to cover or what you want to look at. Anybody? Yeah,
I'm happy to talk.
Yeah.
I guess I'm just here for some revision, really. It's doing my postgraduate studies next year, but it's been 6 years since I finished my undergraduate degree. So I'm just feel like I'm starting back at square one and in a very steep learning curve to try and remember everything again.
Yeah, Susan, I don't think your situation is unique at all. We see a lot of students who are coming back into higher education after a while, and they just want to recap and sort of, yeah, brush up on their skills. Anyone else?
Same here, just recapping, and I've got 2 master's degrees already, so I'm on my 3rd master's. So yeah, just learn. Just want to see if you have anything new to. Yeah, I don't have any anything
specific
to ask you. Yeah, so I'm just hoping to learn something new, whatever it might be.
Anyone else? Anybody else want to share anything? Okay, so then I'm going to move on. So my plan was to look at a bit of unpacking your prompt and planning your essay a little bit, looking at the bigger picture, your macro structure, and then moving into more detail with your microstructure. So getting into the details, how do you create links between sections, and looking into maybe how do you use references in your writing? How do you weave those in? I have a slide in here just on referencing, but it's totally blank. So if you want me to go into referencing, we can do that. if you want me to maybe look at a bit of Gen.ai, I can also switch to a different PowerPoint in that section, and we can talk a little bit about that. I know that's something that's very fairly new to students, and that students often struggle with. So if you want to do that, you just let me know, and we can switch over there to that PowerPoint, and we can talk a bit about Gen.ai, and then we can also look at some revision editing and the final steps of polishing that essay. Right, so if everybody's happy with that, we could just jump right in. Just sort of a fun fact, the word essay actually comes from a French word, which means to try or to attempt, which I thought was very interesting because oftentimes it feels like, yeah, they don't want us to try, they want us to get it right. So yeah, just a bit of a fun fact. That is also comes from initially from the Latin word, which means to weigh. So to weigh up certain things, which I think is very appropriate, because usually with an essay, they want us to create some sort of argument. So they want us to basically state something, a point, make a point, and then discuss that, or to prove it or to argue that point. Okay, so first things first, understanding the essay prompt. Now, essays can, in your prompt, you can get many instruction words, and they all mean something slightly different. So some of these might be a bit confusing. So what I did here was I just popped in a screenshot from a quick guide that we have available on the Learning Zone that lists typical instruction words that you might find in an essay. So the idea when you are looking at your prompt or analyzing your prompt is to find these instruction words. It might say contrast, it might say discuss or distinguish or evaluate or critically evaluate, which is something that lecturers are using increasingly because of the use of Gen.ai. They want you to be very critical about the information that you read, or really engage critically with content. So the first step is to find these instruction words and make sure you understand exactly what it is that they're asking you to do. And you can refer to a quick guide like this one to help you determine what that is. Then you also need to obviously clarify your key terms. So those key content terms that you need to understand, and to understand fully to be able to complete your assignment. And these will be those discipline-specific words that you'll find in your prompt. By the way, using Gen.ai, we'll get, I can see that some of you want to get into that, so we'll have a quick chat about that later. But this is a good place to make use of those Gen.ai tools to help you clarify terms, to simplify things for you. Sometimes when you are studying, especially in a new field or a more advanced field, you might come across terms that aren't very clear or that are very complex, and Gen.ai can help you break those down a little bit and form a good understanding of what they are. So when you get that prompt, take out those instruction words, highlight them for yourselves, and make sure you clarify those key terms, things that you need to understand. Right, and then you need to break it down further. Focus on the structure. What specifically do they want you to do? Sometimes with these prompts, they're very specific about which section should cover which part. So make a note of that. Look at your word count, look at all the specifics that you need to cover. And then make sure you clarify any uncertainties. Ask your instructor if you need any more clarification, especially around Gen.ai. Sometimes students are very unsure about how much Gen.ai they can use, or how heavily they can rely on that. So it's best to clarify that with your instructor before you start. All right, so let's look at your plan. Obviously, the basic plan for the essay is your introduction, your body, and your conclusion, right? I find an outline like this one very helpful because it's in the form of a mind map, which is very helpful because it mimics sort of the way that your brain works with associations, and you're able to see the bigger picture. This is obviously a very simple plan. You might be writing an essay that's a bit more complex, but in essence, this is what you need to do. You need an introduction, a body, and a conclusion. Your introduction, we'll look at that in more detail in just a minute, but it basically has a contextualization, a statement of the issue or the aim, and then it will also have a method or a plan which you will follow. And this method or plan, let me see, can you see my cursor? I hope so. This plan might include 3 or 4 things, which will then form your body paragraphs. So this will be unpacked in the body section of your writing. And then when you get to your conclusion, you're going to restate your main aim. So again, you're going to link up with your introduction. You're going to sum up the main points. So you're going to refer back to your three main things. And then most of the time, they want you to list some sort of broader implication or conclusion about what it was that you found. Okay, right. So I find an outline like this very helpful. What students also like to do is they like to type this out in a Word document. So especially when people struggle a little bit with getting started, just typing out an outline like this for yourself feels like you are doing something. And this will mostly be just what you need to get started. At this stage, some students also like to do a bit of free writing. So what can sometimes happen is if you get a really complex topic for your essay, the first instinct is to Google everything that you can or start looking for sources on the topic, which obviously you need to do at some point. But if you start doing that immediately, before trying to activate the prior knowledge that you already have, you run the risk of getting lost in the research, because there's usually a lot of content that you can access or that you can read. And sometimes students get a little bit lost in this. I think especially postgrad students, because they expect you to engage obviously with all these sources. But if you don't have a clear idea of what you're looking for, you can get a bit lost and it can be overwhelming. So having a clear plan or doing a bit of free writing, what I mean with free writing is just writing out what you know about the topic or what you think you know about the topic. It's a good way to get started and to for you to force yourself to think about the topic a little bit. And then once you have that outline or that plan or that free writing draft, if you get into the research then or into the sources, then it might be a bit easier because you can streamline your search a little bit and you are looking for very specific things. So it might be less overwhelming. Okay, that free writing draft or really planning your outline will also help you develop that central argument or that claim. So it'll help you sort out for yourself in your mind what your argument is. You can even write down your 3 main arguments or your 3 main points that you want to make about the topic already in your outline to help you stay on track. All right. This is just an example that I pulled up for a different unit. I think it was an education unit, if I'm not mistaken. But I thought I'd just show this to you to show you how you can use the rubric in your plan already to make sure you cover everything. So these are just snippets from the rubric, and it shows you how it links directly with the different sections in the essay that they asked the students to cover. And the yellow circles show how I looked at the percentage indicated on the rubric to help me determine how many words I need to spend on it. So I'd like to say how much real estate you give to that section. You often have limited word count, and you need to think about how many words you can spend on each section, how much real estate each section can then take up. So I divided them up into a little word count for myself, based on the percentage that section will weigh. Right, so that's just another tip that you can use to help you plan a little bit and to make sure that you in fact cover everything in your essay by referring to the rubric. Okay, any questions up to this point? Any comments? Anything you'd like to add? Personal experience maybe, what works for you in terms of planning? Anything? I'm not seeing any hands, so I'm going to continue on then. In terms of your introduction, this is the basic introduction. Briefly outline the case. So your contextualization, what is this about? Then a clear statement or an aim that you that states very clearly what you're going to cover in your essay, and then your structure or your method that you're going to follow. So this is just an example from nursing that I included for you, so you can see how they covered very specifically the different sections in the essay, in the introduction, and what that may look like. Any questions on introductions? They are usually fairly easy. I think students don't struggle with them too much. If you know the framework, then it's fairly easy to do this. Also, you can rely very heavily on your prompt, on your prompt or your outline that they give you, your assessment outline, because they will most of the time state very clearly what the aim is supposed to be, or at least give you a topic, and then you can pick your own aim within that broader topic. And sometimes they might even break it down for you into more specific sections, which will then form your plan or your structure. Okay, but it will depend on what your prompt looks like. Okay, right. The body paragraph, just ignore that information prominent. I'll get to that just now. So body paragraph, if you struggle with writing body paragraphs, the peel structure is a good structure to follow, just to get you started. Obviously, not all paragraphs follow this structure, and more experienced writers will obviously have different structures. But a body paragraph should have a main point, so you should make a point. Okay, then it will go into an explanation or an elaboration of that point. You might include an example there to show what it is that you are talking about or what you're explaining, and then you'll have your linking sentence. So either linking to the next paragraph, or if you can't, if it's the end of a section or it doesn't make sense to link to the next part there, then you will just have a concluding sentence. So if you're struggling a little bit, or you feel like your point's not coming across very clearly, or people are struggling to follow your argument, this is a good structure to fall back on. Sometimes it will help you to just highlight these sections. Do I have a clear point? Where is my explanation? Do I elaborate on it further? And then have your linking sentence. It makes it very visual if it's something that you struggle with. But most of the time, the issue comes in with this section where students need to start explaining or elaborating on the point. And this is where you will need to incorporate the evidence into your writing, or start incorporating evidence into your writing. So most of the time, your prompt will ask you to look for sources or to use sources to support your writing, which means you'll have to obviously incorporate other sources with your ideas. Right, so there are basically two ways to do this. The first one is a more author prominent way, where you use the surname of the author to start your sentence, or you use it as part of your sentence. You can see the first example there, Hansen et al. And then the date will just be in brackets. If you use the other way, the information prominent way, you will not use the surname as part of your sentence. You will just paraphrase the information and then have the source in brackets at the end. Okay, is everybody okay with what I'm saying here? Or I'm not sure where you guys are in terms of, or how experienced you are with using sources. Is that okay? Are you all right? Can I move on? It seems that way. Okay, right. So getting into a bit more detail, how to balance your own voice with that of an author or a source. This is a good example of how a student incorporated their own voice with the paraphrase from the quote at the top there, and then including a secondary or another source. I don't want to say a secondary source, that might be confusing, another source, or where they used the direct quotation there, or the direct voice there. So this is the ideal, is for you to be able to state something, state your own opinion, and then use sources to support what you're saying. Okay. Now, a good way to establish that, or to practice that, is to always start and end in your own voice. All right, so if you think about the Peel structure, the start where you make the point, try to put that in your own voice. And the linking sentence or the concluding sentence, try to use your own voice with those two first. And then in the middle section where you start elaborating or explaining your point, that's where you rely on the sources. Okay. You can use reporting verbs to place sources in context, which I will go into a bit more detail just now. And then obviously always remember to acknowledge your source correctly. Okay, so reporting verbs are verbs that you can use to introduce sources into your writing. Here are a few examples of introducing different views of the information, or what the author is trying to say, what the source is trying to say. Or it might be, it might change depending on what you are using the source for. Okay, you might want to show, for example, a particular bias or different viewpoints on the same topic. And then you'll use these reporting verbs to show that relationship, or to show explicitly what it is that you want to do with this source. Right, so indicating that the source is neutral or objective, you can use words like demonstrate, goes to show, according to, recommends, reminds, blah, blah, blah. So there are many. And a good tip is to try and not use the same one all the time. Okay, so to change them up a little bit makes for better writing. And then the second example there shows reporting verbs that you can use to show that the source is making a credible argument, or the author is making a credible argument. And then here are some more examples. Verbs that indicate the author disagrees or agrees, evaluates or examines, proves something, their beliefs. So as you can see, there are many verbs that you can use, and just being aware of this, or maybe keeping a list next to you, is a good idea while you're developing. I think at some point you won't have to keep a list anymore. They will become part of your vocabulary. But if you're starting out, or you find this a bit difficult, it might be a good idea to keep a list next to you. Right. Any questions up to this point?
Just where the previous slide where you talk about direct quote, sorry, the one before maybe, direct voice.
Mm-hmm.
I've always been told in SCU to always paraphrase everything, only because it Turnitin picks it up and it adds to the Turnitin score. So I remember my first essay, and I used a lot of direct voice kind of yeah. And well, thankfully the marker was very generous and knew that that was my first essay. But yeah, I sort of got a lot of comments, not to do that, because the Turnitin picks it up and stuff like that. So I always paraphrase and stuff like that. So I'm not sure if it's different in different faculties. I'm just saying, yeah.
No, you are perfectly correct there. It is always better to use a paraphrase. In saying that, it's not wrong to use a direct quote. If you reference it correctly, it's not plagiarism. It will add to your similarity score in Turnitin. You are correct. But you must remember that Turnitin shows similarity. It doesn't necessarily show plagiarism. Okay, just because something is similar, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's been plagiarized. Okay, now, so in saying that, you must remember that UAs use Turnitin for different things. Okay, obviously they want to curb plagiarism, but they also want you to obviously do your own writing or get your own voice out on the page. And you can't do that if you've just have a collection of copied quotes, right? But there are instances where it might be useful, or you might need to use a direct quote. Examples of that might be when you are quoting a very specific definition, for example, or you might want to show, say, for example, there is a term or a concept that different people or different authors in the field have defined differently. You might want to include those direct quotes to show exactly how these things are different, or to show how one is biased towards something, right? So it very much depends on what it is that you want to show. Generally, yes, good idea, better idea to paraphrase, because it will not push up your similarity score, and it's much easier to incorporate it into your writing if it's in your own words, so if it's a paraphrase. But just be mindful that there might be instances where it is useful or necessary to use a direct quote, depending on what it is that you're doing. Okay. Right, does that answer your question?
Yeah, that was good. Yes, thank you. Yeah, I do realize sometimes you do need to use direct voice, but yeah, I do.
Yeah,
Try
depending
my
on
hardest not to, but sometimes you do need to use the direct voice. Yeah, you can't paraphrase it any better than how the author put it, So
usually has to do with those core, the core knowledge things in a specific field. So yeah. Ed, I see that your mic is open. Do you have a question or a comment? No? Okay. Yes, no? You're welcome to go ahead. No? Okay. Right, moving on then. Referencing, okay. Do you want me to go into more details about referencing? Do you want me to look at Gen.ai at this point in time? Please tell me. How do I proceed here? What do you guys want?
I have a question, if it's all right, about referencing quickly.
Yes.
I feel like I've finished my undergraduate degree, and I feel like I should have asked this question before now. I've sort of just been probably too embarrassed to ask. But when you're writing a paragraph and you say, have multiple sentences that you're discussing a sort of evidence or a point from one source, is it appropriate to put the reference at the end of the first sentence where you begin to talk about that source, or the last sentence where you complete sort of the relevant information from that source, or do you have to put it at the end of every single sentence? Because I've gotten feedback, many years ago, you don't need to put it in every sentence, but I was a bit confused. Should I be putting it at the beginning to signify I've started, or at the end, if that makes sense?
Yeah, your question makes sense. It's just it's a little bit difficult to answer. because it will depend very heavily on what your sentence says, basically.
Okay.
But maybe if I explain it to you in this way, it will be clear. The reader, who is somebody who's just reading your text, remember, you're not there to explain it to them. The text always stands on its own. So the reader needs to be able to understand, or it needs to be very clear to the reader that this information is not your idea. So you are taking this from somewhere. So either your words need to explain that, okay, or your reference, the where you place your reference needs to make that very explicit. So it will depend on what you put in those sentences. I like to if I'm using a lot of information from a source, I like to introduce that, and then at the end explain how that fits with my opinion. But obviously, sometimes students want to start off with their opinion and then use the source as a supporting evidence. So I guess what I'm saying to make it maybe simpler for you is put the reference where it makes sense, or where it will best show that the information that you're providing is not your opinion or is not your idea.
Okay, no worries. Thank you.
Does that make sense to you?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, so I don't think there's a right or wrong. You have to put it in the beginning, or you have to put it in the end, or you have to put it in between. It will depend where you need to flag that you are crossing over between your opinion and something that you got from the source. So as long as you do that somewhere and it's really clear to the reader that you are referencing somebody else here, or you're referencing an expert here, then it'll be fine. Okay. All right, I hope that helps. Okay. Other question, you wanted me to talk a little bit about Gen.ai, right? In terms of referencing. Any other referencing, sort of plain referencing questions that you have? I think some of you are quite experienced, so I don't want to get into, the basics of referencing, as you probably have most of that sorted already. So I don't want to go into that if it's not necessary. I just want to put on the different PowerPoint as soon as I can get my screen to work. Okay, there we go. It's this one. Okay, let's just start here. Can you see the screen okay? You'll have to speak up, guys. I can't see the Zoom screen right now.
Yeah, we can see it. We can see it fine. Yeah.
All right. Okay, so in terms of Gen.ai, what is Gen.ai? It's a type of artificial intelligence, obviously. It can create content, all kinds of content, text, images, music, even art, which is a bit scary for me anyway. But yeah, so it's a tool that helps you create content in some way. So obviously you can use Gen.ai for many different things. But it works by predicting text patterns, but it does not understand the text that it's generating. And that's the important thing to remember here. It's not trained to give us true answers. It's just trained to give us answers that look good. Okay, so be careful. In saying that, I'm not saying that Gen.ai can't give you a true answer. It can, but just remember that a lot of these tools weren't designed for that. They weren't necessarily designed to give you a true answer, just an answer that looks good or that looks true. Okay. Right. So what we can use Gen.ai for, like I said in the beginning, in that initial stage where you're looking for ideas or you're looking for to develop that argument, or you're planning your essay, it can help you explain concepts and terms in a simpler format. It can give you practice questions and answers. It can simplify language for you, or it can even translate from other languages if English is not your first language. It can help you summarize content. It can help you create drafts, outlines, brainstorm ideas, and then later on in your assessment cycle or in your writing cycle, it can help you refine text, or even perform repetitive tasks, which is not so relevant with essay writing, but just so you know. Right, so when you are using Gen.ai at university, it's very important for you to first check if it's allowed. Okay, so I'll show you the new classification in just a minute. They have changed the policy a little bit recently to just help everybody classify or make it really clear what they expect of you in terms of Gen.ai and the use of it in your essay or in any assessment. And then if you use it, you need to acknowledge it like you would acknowledge any other source. Right, so those are the things to look out for. So this is just a flow chart that's available on the university's website as well, just to help you sort out whether or not you can use it. So can you use it? Am I clear about what I can use it for? And then they have different classifications. So maybe I'll skip to that. Usually they show it really explicitly on your prompt or on your assessment brief. Okay, this one just said no, that you may not use it. So just be sure that you understand what specifically what limitations your task has on Gen.ai use. This is the new classification that they put into the policy recently. So you can see it works a bit like a robot or a traffic light. So it'll have green, yellow, and red. Red one, no Gen.ai use. They'll tell you that you can't use it at all for anything. I think the yellow ones are probably what they'll use it, what they'll use most often. But we'll see how they do it. So the two yellow ones are limited partial Gen.ai use. So you can use it for editing, especially Grammarly has become a big issue. Students using Grammarly, obviously you get a Grammarly license if you're enrolled at the university. So it's become a bit of an issue with the Gen.ai use, and is it Gen.ai or isn't it, and how much help is it providing? So on that yellow band, you're allowed to use it for text formatting and to help you with things like that. And then partial use, you can use it to help you generate some ideas and draft structures and do that initial stage that we talked about. And then the green ones are classifications where they allow Gen.ai use for many parts of it, or maybe full Gen.ai use if you want to. Maybe they'll say you can go ahead and do basically whatever you want using Gen.ai, but you must just remember that even if you use it and even if it's allowed, you still need to reference that you've used it. Okay, so if you're allowed to use Gen.ai, it's still a good idea to work through what they call the PAIR framework. So P stands for the problem. What is the problem? Here you need to think about, what is it that you want Gen.ai to do for you? What is the problem you want to solve? What specifically do you need help with? Because there are different Gen.ai tools for different things. If you know exactly what your problem is or what you need help with, then you can pick a suitable tool to do that for you, and the best one to do that for you. If you need a bit of help, or if you're unsure about all the Gen.ai tools that are available, you can use futurepedia.io. They list all the Gen.ai tools, or I suppose not all of them, but a good number of them. And they tell you how they're different and what they work for, and they give you some information. So they help you select the correct tool for what it is that you want to do. Then you obviously need to interact with these tools. So you will give it a prompt. If you've ever, I think ChatGPT is probably the one that's used most often. So if you've used it before, you'll know that you input some sort of prompt. So you ask it to do something, and then based on what you get back, you might want to tweak that prompt a little bit. So you might want to say, okay, this is good, but I need to be shorter, or I need it to be in point form, or I need it to be whatever, depending on what it is that you're doing. So you'll have to refine your prompts and improve the responses. And there is also a lot of information and workshops and things that you can access to help you write good prompts, or to help you basically ask Gen.ai how to do these things for you, or how to help you do these things. And in that way that you can you get better responses. And then the last one is your reflection, just to think about how it has helped you, and how it's impacted your learning. So basically what you learn from the exercise. So if you ask Gen.ai to give you a summary of maybe 10 or 11 sources, it can do that, but you still need to interact and reflect on this information and the knowledge that you gained through that summary. So that's a very important part of using Gen.ai. Right. Here, I just want to make you aware of certain risks. So it's really important to be very critical about the information that you get back from Gen.ai. The first little box there, or screen there, you can see the prompt from ChatGPT. It asks write 100 words about the impact of COVID on higher education sector, blah, 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 and then give me a reference list. So if you look at that reference list, and I'm sure most of you have worked with references before, if you look at them, they look okay, they look good, they look legitimate, but these sources are entirely fabricated, they don't exist. So yeah, you need to be very careful when using ChatGPT. Again, I'm not saying that all Gen.ai fabricates sources. There are other types of Gen.ai that make use of scientific sources, or can give you more scientific sources. I'm just making you aware of this so that you don't use the wrong one, or that you remain very critical of the output. The one on the right, the prompt was to create a picture of 3 surgeons in a hospital hallway, which it did. I created a nice picture, but just take note that the picture is very biased. 3 surgeons in a hallway. These people are all young men, and they're all white, so very biased. The picture that was generated there. So just be careful, or just be aware of the fact that it might be misinterpretation, or it might be very biased, the output that you get. Okay, when you're critically analyzing Gen.ai, or the responses that you get from Gen.ai, you can use the robot test, okay, just to help you a bit. Reliability, check the reliability of the information. Are the authors legitimate? Does it actually exist? And are these authors considered to be experts in the field? Look at the objective again. What was the goal for using Gen.ai, and did it help you, or did it do what you were supposed to, what you wanted it to do? Think about the bias that it might show. Consider the ownership, so who was the developer of the technology, because that will link closely to the reliability of what you get back. And then the type, obviously don't use Gen.ai that was developed for a certain task to do something else, you might not get the response that you wanted or that you needed.
Oh, Nicole, sorry. The slides are really blurry on my end. Is that for everyone, or? And I've maximized it on my like 27-inch screen.
It might be that this is a screenshot that I took from the university's website, so it might be that it's the
the last
quality
couple
is
of,
not that great.
right. The last
Um,
couple of screens have been really blurry. If we just remove the next slide portion, is it going to?
which screen are you seeing? I just see.
At the moment, robot test, but you know how your screen is divided into the current slide and next slide?
Okay. So
If we remove,
you're seeing the presentation screen. I didn't realize you would see.
yeah,
Sorry. Let me just try and get back to
me enlarge that.
that screen. There we go. Sorry. Let me try and share.
Slides are amazing.
Would have liked some Gen.ai to try and sort out my my computer screens. I have so many things open at the moment. Okay, just give me 1 second, guys.
Weird.
I guess the way Nicole had them, the blurry, like it was still readable for me, Shovna. Yeah.
Okay. It was hardly readable for me, but maybe my monitor's old. Yeah, sorry.
Oh,
You
yeah.
are supposed to, you're supposed to be able to see it though properly, and you're not supposed to see the presenter screen. You're supposed to see the actual presentation. So that's really weird.
It was okay for everyone else. Yeah, we can continue. It's probably my monitor. It's 10 years older. Nearly.
That's okay. Let me just see if I can get it better. Oh, guys, just give me 1 second. I can't seem to get it to work. Go. Should be better. Okay. How's that? Better?
That's good. Yep.
Can you now see just the big screen, not
That's
the?
right. Yes.
That's
Much better.
beautiful. Thank you.
Okay.
All right, no problem. I would just want to switch on okay quickly so I can see your faces as well. Okay, right. Let's move on to. Okay, so that was the robot test. Right. Acknowledging the use of Gen.ai. Obviously, this is also in the referencing guide. So just make sure that you reference everything that you use. And just excuse me. It's also very important for you to save different versions. So it's always a good idea to save your input and save the draft or the response that you got, so that you can say, if anybody ever queries the use of your your use of Gen.ai, then you can say you've got your annexure with your drafts in there, or your different prompt responses, saying this is my input, this is what I got out, and this is my final version. So you have almost like a progress report. You can show how you use Gen.ai, and if it's ever queried, you have proof. Okay, is that clear? Is that okay? Everybody okay with that? Yep. Okay. Right, so now I just want to go back to the other screen, or the other PowerPoint presentation. Just make sure it's showing the correct one again. And there we go. Okay. Right, so in terms of referencing, we've talked about a little bit about Gen.ai. Any other questions about referencing?
Not so much referencing, but in the chat box, Shen Lee has asked about improving her writing skills, I guess. You might have to scroll back up to see what she's asked. She's doing Masters of Nursing.
Okay.
Yeah, from Shen Lee. She's doing Masters of Nursing, struggling to write an essay. Training my writing skills. Do you have any suggestions on that? I guess, one of the things is the more you write, the better you get at it. So the more practice, of writing a paragraph, writing an introduction and so forth, it does get easier the more practice you do.
Yeah, so yeah, like I said, some of the stuff that I've touched on today will help you focus your writing a little bit, like having a good outline, using the peel structure to make sure you have good structure within your paragraphs. So that's the starting point. Yeah, and then like she said, practice makes perfect. It's about practicing essentially academic English, or academic writing is a second language for all of us, or a third language, or an additional language for everybody. It's something that comes with time and with practice. So yeah, using what we've covered so far today, and just trying to develop those skills.
Also, Nicole, there's a comment there from Indy. Are there any programs available at SCU to help English non-native students with writing or English skills? Postgrad students, that is.
I don't think at the moment, but or not that I work with very often, but if I'm not mistaken, the college does English teaching for non-native students, and they might have programs that can help with that. So maybe looking at their website, SCU College, because they do language teaching, so they might have something available for you. Okay. Can I continue, or are there any other pressing questions at the moment?
Yeah, no, I think we've caught up. Yeah.
Okay. Right. So, in terms of linking devices, sorry, I am aware of the time, guys, so I'm going to go through this last part. Linking devices, if you look at the example there. Smith dislikes dogs, Smith likes chihuahuas, so it doesn't make a lot of sense. But if you use the logical connectors, it makes a whole lot of sense. So basically, with linking devices, it's just about not making a 90-degree turn without putting your indicator on. So it's signaling relationships and showing, but using the correct word to show that relationship between ideas. These two sentences on screen now can be linked in many ways, using however, because, or particularly. But using that linking device changes the meaning of those ideas. So this is just to make you aware of the fact that the linking words that you use has impact on the meaning. And I see very often that students, they sort of know that they need to put a linking word there or use a linking device, but they pop any linking device in there just because it seems to flow better then. But they unfortunately put the wrong word in there, and then it changes the meaning and it changes what it is, what they want to say. So it's very important that you use these devices to show your reader, to help your reader go through your writing, so to guide your reader through your writing, and then just be very, very mindful of what these words mean and what they show. So some of them show contrast, some of them are used for addition, some of them are used for to explain certain things further. Some have a cause and effect function. And if you're interested in developing this further, there is a quick guide on the Learning Zone on specifically linking words. It's got a big table with the type, so the category, so either cause and effect or chronological or whatever. And then they have examples of these words that show that type of relationship. So it's a good idea maybe to read through that, or to be very mindful of how these words can change meaning and how necessary they are for you to link up between paragraphs and also within a paragraph. Okay. If students struggle with this, I sometimes tell them to just take maybe 2 paragraphs and put a linking device between each and every one, just to practice, to see if they can do that, because it forces you to think about the relationship between your sentences. So if you force yourself to try and put a linking device after or between every sentence, 2 sentences, it really helps you to think about that relationship and how your sentences link up with one another. Okay, then you'll get to writing your conclusion. We touched on this already in the beginning, restating the issue, summarizing your main points, and a closing thought or a broader implication. Remember that we don't put new information in our conclusions. It's just a conclusion. So it's pulling it all together and restating the main things. A good tip is to put your introduction next to your conclusion when you're writing it, to make sure that you touch on everything. Some of the first year students, I always say it's like a hamburger. So you've got a bun and a bun, bread and bread. You need to have bread and bread. It can't be bread and lettuce, or so the two need to link up. So it's a good idea to keep them next to each other when you're writing your conclusion. You might also find that when you're writing your conclusion, if you started with your introduction and you're writing your conclusion, you realize that the argument may have taken a different angle, or you might have changed something slightly. Then you need to obviously adapt your introduction to your argument, which is normal. It happens a lot. Some writers even write their introductions last. They first develop their argument and then they write the introduction last to make sure it truly reflects what they're doing or the argument that they're making. You run the risk of going off track if you do that, but if you're a more experienced writer, it might be a good technique for you to do that. In terms of revision and editing, it's good to have a revision or an editing strategy. Revision is different from editing, remember that. So you first revise. That is the section where you write multiple drafts, or you tweak your draft up to a point where it's perfect, your argument flows perfectly, all the information's in there that you want in there. So that's part of revision. Okay, so it'll maybe have bigger shifts. You might shift paragraphs around, or you might shift sections of information around. So it's a bigger, it's talking to the bigger structure most of the time, or the bigger argument. Okay. And then you'll get to the nitty-gritty parts, the editing, where you'll check for mistakes, you'll check for grammar issues, you'll check your referencing. And then what I like to do last is that formatting check. So making sure the font is correct everywhere, my numbering, headings and such. But it's good to have a strategy. So ask yourself, what am I going to do first? First, I'm going to review for the bigger structure, the macro structure. Then I want to check references, then I'm doing grammar, and tick them off as you go. It's a good idea to leave a day or two in your planning, leave a day or two before you do your editing. It's good to have some distance from your writing, because we often correct our own mistakes when we're reading, because we know what we want to say. So if you leave it for a little bit, it's easier to spot mistakes. Yeah, after a while, after you've left it for a little bit. Okay, that's it. You've asked a couple of questions already, but if you have any more questions, I am here for you. You're welcome to stay behind and to ask away. If you do have a second, I'd love for you to fill out a quick survey. It just asks you a couple of questions about the workshop and what you got from it, or what you gained from it. So if you have a second, I would love for you to complete the survey. If not, you're more than welcome to fire away with the questions.
Thanks, Nicole. Well, we've got a few minutes left while we've got some time with Nicole. So any queries or comments? There was one question earlier, Nicole, about whether you would supply the students with your PowerPoints. In terms of what the one way it could happen is if you send them to me and then I'll send them to those who registered.
Yeah, sure. I don't mind sharing them at all. I was just going to ask what would be the best way to do that.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
yeah, sure. I can do that.
Great.
I'm just thinking whether or not I should incorporate those Gen.ai slides into the bigger PowerPoint first, rather than sending you to them.
Sure, if you have time.
Yeah, sure.
I think that was really, really helpful, the Gen.ai slides. And you know, what was shocking to me was how was it ChatGPT makes up references. So that is really scary for all of us as students. But yeah, very thorough presentation. I think the reporting verbs is very helpful. And you know, using your own voice and mixing up the ways that you incorporate sources. So yeah, excellent. So yes, Susan, we will send out slides, but it might be a day or two.
I also see that Susan asked if I do a similar session for thesis writing.
Oh yeah.
Unfortunately, no, not at this stage. Yeah, so
if you take a look at our the Postgraduate Association YouTube channel, we've done some workshops on writing a literature review, writing a methodology, writing a research design, and so forth. So like, you know, all those components of an essay. So I put the link there for our YouTube channel where this recording will go as well. So take a look around in there and there'll be some helpful things. Yeah. Look, I might finish the recording there, but we can stick around for a minute or two. Okay, thank you. All right.